metallic sky roiled with dark, tempestuous clouds that were not born of Earth's atmosphere, but rather formed by an alien hand. They flickered with an unearthly green light, casting an eerie glow upon the ruined landscape below. Earth's cities and remote enclaves lay silent, their electronic hearts abruptly stilled. There was no electricity, no radio or microwave transmissions, and not a single spark to illuminate the night. The alien invaders had systematically severed the planet's technological lifelines. Bands of frightened humans huddled beneath whatever crude shelter they could find. Campfires were stoked by flints and friction, an art lost to centuries of convenience and now revived by dire necessity. They caught whatever small game roamed nearby and boiled water in metal pots blackened by smoke. The silence imposed by the alien presence was oppressive, as if the invaders were deliberately wringing every last vestige of comfort from the human experience. And yet, from this deprivation sprang something unexpected. A rediscovery of raw instincts that had lain dormant for centuries. In the hushed night, deep in the mountainous outskirts once known for tourist trails, a group of survivors gathered around a bonfire's orange glow. These men and women had once operated tanks, drones, and specialized rifles. Now their revered technology sat dead in their hands, and they used those same hands to sharpen spears and bows. Dust clung to their once pristine combat gear. The chain of command was maintained only by the unstoppable will to survive. They called themselves Echo Company, though their official designations had little meaning now. Their leader was Captain Vera Norris, a woman whose determination radiated like the sun. In her youth, she had survived cycles of famine and warfare in remote conflicts around the globe. Now, her experience fused with a core of unwavering resolve. She spoke quietly, as if the stars themselves had ears. "We've got to assume they're watching," she said, kneeling beside the smoldering embers of the fire. "It was too easy for them to disable our technology. That means we have to think outside anything they expect." She passed around hand-drawn sketches on bits of scavenged paper. They detailed the terrain beyond the forest, up the slope, and down into a valley that led to a plateau. Rumor suggested an alien stronghold stood there, some monolithic structure that projected the electromagnetic field disabling Earth's technology. Her second-in-command, a tall man named Sergeant Adam Reyes, nodded at the crude drawings. He had been an avid hunter and survivalist in his civilian life, making him invaluable in these times. "They likely predict we'll try to restore our guns, tanks, and jets. But if they're prepared for that, we have to approach them in a way they can't foresee." The group of soldiers exchanged knowing glances. Their technology lay in silent ruin, but they had not lost their cunning. In hushed tones, they began to plan an operation more ancient than any digital network. A direct confrontation that would rely on stealth, muscle, and the timeless tools of war. A young private, Leah Morris, carefully inspected arrowheads molded from scrap metal hammered into shape. Her eyes held a mixture of trepidation and determination. She had enlisted to defend her country with cutting-edge technology, never imagining she would be forging her own arrows. Now, she took to the task with a fervor that burned as brightly as the flames flickering around her. When she finally looked up from the arrows she'd been testing against her forearm, she realized her heart was pounding with adrenaline, even in the relative quiet. "They won't expect us to come at them with bows," she whispered, as if speaking the idea out loud might alert any unseen watchers. "Why would we do that if we had advanced weapons at our disposal?" Reyes nodded. "Exactly. No creature from the cosmos expects an unarmed species to mount a genuine counterattack. That arrogance could be our advantage." Hours before dawn, the team set out from their makeshift camp. Nora Robinson, a scout from a disbanded reconnaissance battalion, took the lead. She moved as silently as a ghost, scanning the darkness with keen eyes. The moonless sky worked to their advantage, veiling them from prying alien machines overhead. Despite the stillness in the trees, they could not ignore signs of the extraterrestrial presence. Trees, crumpled by a force too precise to be human, shimmering lights far off in the distance, and tracks of what looked like enormous mechanical limbs imprinted in the mud. Yet no attack came. The aliens, it seemed, were biding their time. They had already crippled Earth by stripping it of the technology upon which human civilization depended. In doing so, they believed they had robbed the planet's inhabitants of the very means to defend themselves. Indeed, many civilians had surrendered in despair, praying or bargaining with the unknown menace that had arrived from the heavens. The Echo Company resisted with a steadfast resolve grounded in Earth's oldest survival instincts. They navigated with battered compasses and by the brighter stars peeking intermittently through the swirling green clouds. The climb was arduous, the terrain dotted by ravines and jagged outcrops of rock. Occasionally, the group paused to check for any sign of alien patrols. Even if no mechanized drones soared overhead, the sense of being watched clung to their minds. Several hours into this stealthy trek, they heard a faint buzzing. It played at the edges of their hearing, a sound just above human perception. They froze, eyes darting among the twisted tree trunks. The hair on the back of their necks stood erect. Gradually, the buzzing crescendoed into a throbbing hum. A small, saucer-like machine drifted through the canopy, searching. It had no visible pilot, no cockpit or rotating blades. It only emanated that oppressive hum and glowed faintly along its rim. Its smooth hull glistened with the green radiance that painted the clouds above. Vera motioned for the group to scatter into the undergrowth. She and Reyes pushed through the brambles, barely breathing, their hearts pounding as the craft hovered so close that its haze of light bathed them in a ghostly silhouette. Everyone crouched, hidden by leaves and branches, shields of the forest. Leia pressed her body against the ground, clutching her bow close to her chest. Her mouth went dry as she watched the craft's light sweep across the bottom of a gnarled tree, inches from her trembling boots. After a moment that stretched out like an eternity, the buzzing receded. The craft drifted past to continue its mechanical patrol. When Vera gave the signal, they emerged. No words were needed. The relief was evident as perspiration glistened on their faces. Still, they would not be deterred from their mission. Hours later, they reached a vantage point where the forest thinned, opening onto the valley. Dawn was creeping up, an anemic orange glow behind the alien-induced roiling clouds. Below, a monstrous structure rose from the heart of the valley, a cluster of spires that pulsed with green energy, each one connected by arcs of luminescent matter. This was likely the source of the dampening field, shutting down Earth's electronics. Reyes squinted, trying to fathom its construction. It looks organic, metallic, but alive somehow. It's emanating some frequency that covers the planet, Vera said, lying on her belly behind a bank of brush. We knock that out, maybe we get our tech back, or at least cripple their hold on us. How do we infiltrate that? Leia asked in a hushed voice. We have bows, spears, and homemade explosives. They're literally from another world. We do it carefully, Reyes replied, his voice edged with wry determination. We use the terrain and our cunning, and we pray they've overlooked our primitive weapons. The descent into the valley took the better part of the day. They moved slowly to avoid detection, using gullies and dips in the ground to stay hidden from the patrolling drones overhead. At one point, they encountered half a dozen civilians who were also traveling on foot, lost, frightened, carrying almost nothing. Vera directed them to a safer place near the mountains, instructing them to keep out of sight. Then Echo Company pressed on. A thunderous rumble echoed across the valley's walls that night. The structure's spires crackled with renewed energy. Arcs of light danced and hummed, intensifying in strange pulses. In those flashes, the group glimpsed a bizarre silhouette floating around the structure's base. An alien being shaped like an elongated form with limbs that bent at impossible angles. Rays of green light emanated from its limbs, forming some intangible barrier around the spires. They waited in thick brush, hoping the creature and its kin might not venture too far. At intervals, beams of green light swept across the valley, scanning for any trace of human presence. Yet the soldiers remained concealed, enduring the gnawing cold and the sting of relentless fear. They allowed themselves only the softest, shallowest breaths. Nora's whispered words carried in the darkness. I think they're focusing more outward, scanning for large technology. They have no reason to suspect a handful of us on foot. She was proven correct when the scanning beams flickered away, the alien retreated, and the wall of luminescent energy around the structure softened. The night grew less bright and less terrifying. Still hidden, the group closed in. Sergeant Reyes and Private Leia used their bowstrings as silent takedown weapons, relying on the primal skill of archery. They crept up to a small outpost that glowed softly. Emerging from behind a cluster of strange, rock-like formations, they spotted several short, humanoid constructs patrolling the perimeter. The constructs had shiny heads with slits for eyes and scuttling movements reminiscent of insects. No living, breathing aliens were in sight, but these mechanical sentries were enough of a threat. Vera signaled for Reyes to pick his target. He fitted a handmade arrow, holding his breath. Though the bow was crude, fashioned from carbon rods and salvaged sinew, his hunting skills were inherited from countless hours in the wild. He released the arrow with fluid grace. It soared in near silence, striking the nearest construct at a joint in its torso. Sparks erupted. The machine collapsed with a stuttering attempt at an alarm. Another soldier loosed an arrow, taking out a second sentinel, just as alarms erupted from within the outpost itself. The group dashed into action, crossing the short gap to the outpost under a hail of flashing green pulses. The machines inside were waking. The air sizzled with an alien technology that the invaders still possessed. Yet the humans had a crucial advantage: unpredictability. With no electronics to jam or hack, their primal approach caught the sentinels off guard. They fought with sharpened metal spears, clubs reinforced with steel rods, and bows. When the outpost was cleared, 2 soldiers had been wounded by glowing pulses that seared flesh like concentrated radiation. The wounds were grievous, but not outright fatal. Quickly, Vera and Reyes rigged homemade incendiary devices from chemicals and gunpowder they'd scavenged or manufactured by rudimentary means. The outpost was consumed in a bright wave of flame, leaving behind molten alien metal. This victory lit a spark in their hearts. For the first time since the invasion, they had struck back, and it felt good. Word spread by mouth, carried by runner from one hidden pocket of resistance to another. Within days, more survivors trickled into the valley, guided by the rumor that a handful of desperate souls had dealt the aliens a blow. The influx included a group of tribal hunters from a remote region. They arrived barefoot, bearing handcrafted bows and boasting lethal accuracy. Another contingent found them. Former martial arts practitioners who had turned to forging blades from salvaged steel. All of them carried the flame of hope that humans could fight back without the crutches of modern machines. From a ridge above a dry riverbed, Reyes and Leia surveyed the growing human encampment that had taken root. The newcomers formed rough tents using canvas and tarps, and fires dotted the valley floor. Though meager, the sight pulsed with purpose and determination. These people, Leia said, her voice hushed in awe. They're mobilizing from practically the Stone Age. It's like we've stepped back in time. Reyes offered a faint smile. Maybe. But in stepping back, we might find we're more resilient than ever. Our technology lulled the aliens into thinking we couldn't cope without it. They're in for a surprise. With the outpost destroyed, the structure's defenders would be on higher alert. Any large-scale movement could draw a barrage of those lethal pulses. Yet the humans now had numbers on their side. Small, scattered groups that could converge from multiple directions, hitting the alien fortress like a pack of wolves cornering a wounded predator. Night fell under a canopy of greenish clouds. Flashes on the horizon revealed more distant battles. The aliens weren't content to leave Earth to its own. If any city held out a threat of technological might, the invasion forces rained destruction without mercy. But here, in this valley, the aliens had less to target in the conventional sense. The humans were armed with nothing that would register as a threat on the advanced scanners. At exactly midnight, Echo Company and their new allies moved out in waves, spreading across the basin with measured determination. Thick cloud cover helped mask them from the drones that still combed the skies, and flickers of green lighting provided intermittent, ghostly illumination. It was an oddly primal dance, shadows shifting in the half-light, dozens of figures creeping across open ground with only bows, spears, or swords. As they neared the towering spires, another ring of sentinels advanced to meet them. Larger mechanical monstrosities that walked upright on stilt-like legs. Their heads held clusters of green lights that scanned hungrily. Sparks of energy crackled around them. Some fired bursts of radiant beams at the humans below. Those beams punched through the ground, scarring the earth with molten slag. Several unlucky fighters were struck and fell with tortured screams. But the rest pressed on, fueled by desperation and anger. They rushed under the mechanical legs, driving spears into joints or hurling homemade grenades that exploded with concussive force. One particularly large sentinel pinned a soldier beneath its limb, but an arrow from Leah found the machine's triangular head. It reeled, showering sparks, giving the soldier time to scramble clear. From all sides, humans unleashed their crude but deadly arsenal. At last, the towering machines toppled. Their glowing heads ruptured in showers of green light, yet the spires remained, humming with alien potency. Two mechanical defenders stood in the humans' path now, but the real challenge was how to dismantle the fortress itself. As the group progressed, the air felt heavier, as though charged with static. The structure's surface pulsed in geometric patterns, as though reacting to their presence. Captain Vera, flanked by Reyes and Nora, took the lead. Their plan was to scale the spire's outer ridges and plant explosives made from volatile chemicals at critical junctures. A slash here, a blast there, might destabilize the entire network of spires. If they succeeded, Earth might get a fighting chance to reclaim at least partial use of its technology. Climbing the spires was like scaling a living mountain. The surface had ridges and grooves that sometimes opened and closed with slow, fleshy motions. Certain sections were almost translucent, revealing internal energies coursing like blood. At one point, Vera nearly lost her grip when a segment of the wall abruptly retracted, forcing her to hang by one arm over a dizzying drop. She gritted her teeth, forced her other arm to grip the next available protrusion, and kept climbing. Alien shrieks reverberated through the structure from within, resonating in the same tone as the green pulses of light. At times, a gaseous vent would open, expelling a blast of noxious fumes that left the climbers choking and gasping for cleaner air. Despite these perils, they advanced upward, foot by agonizing foot. Part way to the spire's midpoint, Vera found a shallow recess. She tested the surface with a gloved hand, pressing until it gave slightly. "Here," she whispered to Reyes. "Could be close to a main artery in this thing's energy system." He handed her the bag of explosives. Nora moved nearby, bracing herself as best she could on the precarious ledge. Vera set the charges, fusing them to the surface with an adhesive mixture. She rigged the primitive detonator, a chemical fuse that would self-ignite once they were at a safe distance. Then she gave a terse nod. "Hurry," muttered Reyes. "We can't stay here. I'm hearing more of those constructs clattering below." Indeed, mechanical limbs scraped the ground far below them, climbing in pursuit. They continued upward. The climb grew steeper, narrower. The wind picked up, carrying an acrid odor of alien construction. At last, near the top of the spire, they found a vantage point from which to place the second set of explosives. Vera's eyes burned from the fumes. Her muscles screamed in protest, but she recalled the billions of souls who had once called Earth home. Her mind flickered with images of children forced to cower from the invaders, of entire cities left powerless. This gave her the grit to push through. They secured the second set of charges. Below, they could see the flicker of battles raging near the base. Groups of humans maneuvered around collapsed mechanical hulks, positioning themselves to flank any new defenders. Some of the fighters wore body paint, a sure sign that they came from tribes or communities that had always existed close to Earth's primal roots. For a moment, Vera marveled at the idea that in a strange twist, Earth's survival hinged on the very skills and traditions so many had deemed outdated. "We've got to get off this thing before everything blows," said Nora, her voice trembling with exertion. Vera nodded. She pulled the chemical fuse, sparking the ignition for both sets of explosives. An acrid whiff of sulfur filled the air. Time to move. Climbing down proved even more treacherous. They half slid, half fell along the spire's slick ridges. On one occasion, Leah lost her footing and nearly plummeted, but Reyes caught her arm just in time. 20 agonizing minutes later, they were on more stable ground. In the distance, they spotted more watchers scuttling around aliens with elongated limbs that glowed. But these watchers looked genuinely panicked, as if they sensed the imminent disruption. Vera motioned for everyone to retreat behind a ring of rocky outcroppings at the far edge of the valley. Other squads had also planted charges across different sections of the spires, though the number of successful placements remained unknown. Through labored breaths, the survivors reached relative cover, bracing themselves, one by one. They covered their ears, waiting for the moment of truth. In rapid succession, explosions thundered with a punishing roar, rolling across the valley like planetary tremors. A series of green flashes erupted from the spire's internal structure, accompanied by splintering cracks that sounded like a forest of giant redwoods being snapped. The luminous lines connecting the spires flickered wildly, then collapsed into a shower of sparks. Where once an alien fortress stood proud and impregnable, fragments of shattered metallic flesh now crashed to the ground. A deafening groan echoed in the aftermath, as if the entire valley had come alive to wail for the dying spires. For a long moment, no one moved. The air was thick with dust and greenish fumes. Then came a surge of static overhead, a crackle unlike anything they had heard since the invasion. The clouds flickered with an uncertain, almost hesitant charge. It was as if the invisible clamp that had gripped Earth's technology was stuttering. Whether or not that clamp had fully lifted remained to be seen. The allied humans gradually emerged from their hiding places, gingerly picking their way across the smoldering ruin. Here and there, mechanical limbs twitched in death throes. Farther on, cowering creatures with elongated limbs hissed in distress. Farther on, cowering creatures with elongated limbs hissed in distress, some of them apparently in Reyes, and the others approached with cautious curiosity, bows at the ready. A flicker of understanding passed through the human ranks. The aliens, for all their cosmic might, had just been laid low by a species that had rediscovered its primal ferocity. Echo Company's victory had arrived through grit, cooperation, and a refusal to be subdued. If Earth's technology still lay silent, humanity had proved it could achieve victory without it. And if the dampening field was truly down, even partially, then a wave of renewed possibilities awaited them. In the days that followed, pockets of humanity across the globe repeated this pattern, toppling alien structures wherever they had the numbers and the will to do so. Though communication remained rudimentary, runners passing messages, improvised signal fires on mountaintops. Rumors spread like wildfire. People from all walks of life took solace in Echo Company's triumph. They learned to fashion arrows beside the remains of once thriving cities, to bind wounds with leaves and bone splints, to outsmart advanced drones with cunning and camouflage. Day by day, night by night, the tide of occupation began to recede. As for Echo Company, the next weeks demanded vigilance. The aliens still lurked, and the battered survivors of the Spire assault needed medical attention. But even in agony, they found hope. One morning, Leah discovered faint signals flickering on a salvaged radio. It was battered, its circuits partially fried, but a tiny voice crackled. "Can anyone hear?" "This is Lieutenant Chen in Berlin. Technology partially restored. Rallying teams, hold on, we can still fight." Leah's hand shook with excitement. She rushed to Captain Vera, who listened with tears on her soot-stained face. Across the valley, as word spread, cheers erupted. Although the aliens had devastated humankind's modern capabilities, they had not broken humanity's will to resist. Indeed, the invaders had witnessed a wild, primal determination that had taken them by astonished surprise. Weeks turned to months, and the battered Earth slowly knit itself back together. People learned to harness the faintly returning power systems in synergy with newly honed primitive skills. Medical facilities reopened, albeit in rudimentary forms, powered by salvage generators that sputtered to life wherever the aliens' grip had been loosened. The surviving aliens retreated to remote corners, sometimes launching desperate counterattacks, but never again holding the upper hand as they once did. Captain Vera, scarred and exhausted, eventually led her company back to the forested mountains, only to find more allies waiting. Some had arrived with horse-drawn carts packed with supplies, others with reactivated vehicles that ran on early mechanical engines. Carefully, piece by piece, they rebuilt the trust and cooperation needed to carry on. The technology that once defined humankind's era of convenience now served a supporting role. The real strength lay in what had awakened during the darkest nights: unwavering resolve, raw ingenuity, and the primal instincts that had helped the first humans survive in a harsh and unforgiving world. One morning, just beyond dawn, Vera found herself standing outside a makeshift command tent, gazing toward the horizon. The once constant green glow had vanished, replaced by more natural clouds, tinged pink with sunrise. She felt the warmth of the sun on her skin, true warmth, untainted by alien fields. Broken machines and towering husks littered the distant valley floor, silent reminders of the improbable victory won by blood and sweat. Reyes joined her. The radio scouts report that more camps have taken up arms. They're replicating our approach, going in quietly, disabling their strongholds, and using handmade munitions. The aliens are losing ground in every hemisphere. Word is, we might have a chance at pushing them off Earth altogether. That sounded impossible a month ago, Vera replied softly, her voice raw with the memory of countless fallen. And yet, here we are, still standing. She could almost feel the souls of the lost urging her onward. The gentle rustle of leaves in a morning breeze reminded her of the ephemeral nature of each day. They had endured the worst, using the most ancient strategies of warfare, and they had shown that Earth's defenders still carried enough spirit to triumph. In a final reflective moment, Vera inhaled the crisp air, remembering the archaic thrill of forging weapons by hand, the hush of a bowstring being drawn, and the primal beat of a human heart, undeterred by the machinery of an advanced foe. Quietly, she turned to Reyes and said, "We're not done fighting, but for the first time, I believe we can truly win this." He smiled, the dawn light dancing on his tired features. "So do I." Together they walked away from the forest line, heading for the newly awakened camp, where more survivors now gathered, ready to restore the world that had nearly been stripped from their grasp. Thick in the air was the undeniable certainty that humanity had found a new path, one that fused the remnants of old technology with the ancient instincts that no alien empire could ever fully suppress.